So just recently, Luke Cage actually came out on Netflix, and the question stands, is it actually any good? If you've been keeping up with any of the Netflix Marvel shows, then clearly the answer is gonna be yes. If you enjoy Daredevil, Jessica Jones, either season of Daredevil, you're gonna enjoy this. And it's really, I came into it knowing that it was gonna be good, but there's a second level that I'm expecting. There's just the usual now, what's considered Marvel Netflix. It's gonna be good, it's gonna be enjoyable, it's gonna be kinda gritty and dark. But is it going to be any more than that is what I was specifically looking forward to Luke Cage for. And after completely forgetting that it came out this Friday, I have an event countdown set up. So it tells me when each of the new movies or anything exciting in my life is happening. And it started ringing at 12 at night, and I was like, oh shit, I have to fucking watch that shit now. Usually I stay up the entire night and watch the entire thing without sleeping. But because I forgot, I didn't actually get enough sleep the day before, so I watched the first episode at 12, and then I took a nap, and then I marathoned it the entire day. And I suspect that it's a good show. It's a really enjoyable, good show. Like I previously mentioned, if you like Daredevil or Jessica Jones, you're gonna enjoy this. But is it anything else than another Netflix Marvel show? I think Luke Cage is very unique. See, at the beginning of the show, it feels really tethered to, earthly beings or whatever. I'm trying to say, it's kind of unscripted and I'm kind of just talking at the moment. But it feels very ground level. It feels very human. You start off Daredevil or Jessica Jones. Jessica Jones is fucking stopping cars and shit. And Daredevil jumping through buildings and doing stuff like that. In the first 2 to 3 episodes, Luke Cage isn't really doing anything too fantastical. The show starts out with a very human element and really focuses on these people. On the people of Harlem. The show takes place in Harlem, New York, that is highly considered to be a black native area in New York. I've never been there, so it's just kind of things that people know about, but I don't really know much about the history of Harlem. It comes with that point of view really strongly. Right off the bat, Luke Cage keeps quoting members of the black community from history that are really well known. He's talking about Malcolm X, that kind of stuff. Just people like that. And I'm not talking about quoting in the sense Makishima Shogo and Psychopaths where he just randomly quotes them and stuff. It's just kind of references and stuff because this show is very black powered centric. And I'm not trying to say that this show is not enjoyable to anyone who isn't black. I'm not black, I'm Mexican. And I can still really relate and really understand the topics that I was really trying to discuss and how it felt. And that was at the beginning though. It really started off being this human element, real people talking about real things, real communities, real non-super villain kind of bad guys. The bad guys of the season are quite a few, and I'm gonna talk about it a little more, but at the beginning they're very human. And then around 4 episodes in, Luke Cage starts doing his Luke Cage thing, where he's bulletproof and shit, and it's really good, but it completely breaks that human element when it starts happening, because it was really focusing on these people, and them talking, they're going to their gangs, and other gangs and stuff, how they deal to the day-to-day living, just stuff. Luke Cage, I'm not gonna try to spoil too much, but Luke Cage, something happens to him, and he's I'm out of the shadows, I'm gonna stop trying to pretend that I'm not a superhuman being, and I'm gonna stop all this horrible shit from happening, because something specifically happens that triggers that reaction for him. And when he starts doing that, it goes from being the very human, grounded show to a very superhero show where he's walking around getting shot everywhere and all these fantastical things are happening. Though, it's not as fantastical and superhero as Daredevil or even Jessica Jones was, because in those shows, Jessica Jones was clearly fighting the super villain who controlled minds and stuff, and Daredevil, though he was fighting these gangs and stuff, he's still this guy who can see being blind, and he's doing flips and stuff in the shit, and it's really cool, and it really does benefit to those shows. But here it's still this very fantastical guy, Luke Cage, doing all these superhero superpower stuff. But the stuff around him still feels pretty human, and there's this really strong element that I really fucking enjoyed, that was, because he's such a strong, incredibly, he's pretty much immortal, you can't shoot him, you can't do any of that. Jessica Jones you can shoot, Daredevil you can shoot, but this guy, he's invincible pretty much. So there's this element of, instead of it being Daredevil trying to fight against the Kingpin, and he's trying to do his best, but the Kingpin has all this resources and stuff, and how is he gonna get through? It's kind of the opposite way. It's kind of the bad guys being how the fuck am I gonna fucking deal with this motherfucker who could just fucking, you shoot at and he can survive and stuff, how do I deal with this? And it's a really cool element. It's really cool for the first little while when they're kind of struggling with that, and It's exciting and it's new and it's really cool. Straight off the bat though, people really enjoy the human element and grounded thing that I was talking about in the first few episodes. I, to be honest, found them kind of average. And not because they weren't good, but because they felt like Netflix Marvel at what it is. It just felt like Luke Cage is fighting the gangs, and these gangs are doing this gang stuff, whatever. And it just kind of felt like me like, oh, it's another Wilson Fisk. It's another one of those gangs that Daredevil was fighting in season 1 or 2, or even Jessica Jones kind of went against when she was not fighting Kilgrave or whatever. It just kind of felt like more of the same, which kind of put me off. Because, like I said, I was trying to expect more than just Marvel Netflix, but it's still good for what it is. So without getting into too many spoilers, I kind of don't want to go into the plot too much anymore. I kind of want to talk about the characters though. There's quite a few number of characters, a lot that come back that are kind of messy and they just kind of appear randomly. But I'm just going to talk about the mainstay characters. Luke Cage. I loved him in Jessica Jones. A lot of people kind of find him boring because he's like this kind of invincible guy. But I liked him. I've always have liked him in the comics and stuff. I've never read too many Luke Cage comics, but I know him from the Mighty Avengers? Yeah, the new, well, not the new, it's kind of been years now, but the Mighty Avengers that ran with Superior Spider-Man in it. I know him from that, and I also, in the New Avengers, the post Avengers Disassemble New Avengers, he was a really big part of that, so I know him from that kind of stuff. I've never read too many Heroes for Hire or any stuff like that, but I do know about the character. So, all in all, I really enjoyed his character of Luke Cage, and I specifically enjoyed Claire Temple, the girl who was supposed to be the Night Nurse, apparently, but apparently the Night Nurse is going to be in Doctor Strange, and she's no longer the Night Nurse. For a very long time, I thought she was the Night Nurse, but I guess that's not a thing anymore. I loved her character. I loved her in Daredevil. I love her in fucking Jessica Jones, Daredevil season 2. Like, she is best girl. And she's a really big part of this show, and I really, really enjoy that. Because, I don't know, I just think she's adorable, and she's, like, really cool, and, like, not angsty or anything like that. Like, kind of Daredevil, Jessica Jones kind of tend to be, and kind of Luke Cage a little bit. She's just kind of this cool person who's kind of like, man, fuck, I guess I'll fucking heal these super people. Why do I keep getting myself in this situation? But, like, at this point, she's posed her Daredevil season 1 phase where she's kind of like, I gotta get out, man. This is too dangerous for me. She's kind of like, Luke Cage, you're fighting these evil people. I'm with you the entire time. And it's just kind of hilarious. And I kind of love her for that. She's a really exciting character. Phil Coulson in the first phase of Marvel movies was really noted to be the glue that glued those movies together. Like, he would show up in Thor, he would show up in Iron Man, and people who are just watching that kind of like related to that because they were like, oh, this character is in all the movies, so like it feels connected and stuff. He was the glue that stuck stuff together. I feel like Claire Temple is kind of the glue of the Marvel Netflix shows. She's the one that keeps showing up. It's really funny how in this show, not giving it too many spoilers, but like anytime that a lawyer would be mentioned, she'd be like, oh, I know one, and like it gets to such a funny level where it like happens so many times where someone mentions a lawyer and you in your head are like, oh, Claire, what you gonna say about Daredevil? It's really funny, really enjoyable stuff. And I think about this show though, there's not too many comedious moments. There's not a lot of Daredevil season 1, like, oh, we're avocados kind of thing. A lot of people complain about that because they found those jokes really awkward and not well paced and stuff. But I thought they were really human because when you make jokes with like friends that you kind of hold to a professional level, they're a little bit awkward and it's like kind of funny and it's not like you're going around really being a dick like you are with really, really close friends. And like you can kind of see that from Foggy and Daredevil. But in this show, they kind of completely thrown that out of the window. The only kind of jokes that kind of come up in a while are kind of just random little moments that are kind of serious and they kind of come off as funny, or these jokes that just kind of happen instead of like the characters actually telling jokes, which is different and whatever. I don't mind it. I never minded the Daredevil jokes, but people did, so I guess this is kind of a change. Other characters of note are Misty Knight, I don't really know much about her character other than she was in Ultimate Galactus Trilogy, the like Galactus event that happened in the Ultimates universe like really early on, and she was like part of the second volume of that, and she was a very small minor part, and I really don't know much about her. I didn't even know she was in this show until I started watching it and they started mentioning her name, and I was like, oh, that's Misty Knight. She doesn't have her robotic arm that she does in the comics, and she's kind of a cool character. I actually really enjoyed her. There are points where she kind of became annoying, or like I didn't really understand what her thing was, because she kind of seems to have this superpower, but it's not really a superpower, she's just like really smart, kind of photographic memory kind of thing. And at points, I'm not saying that she was like an annoying character, but like things that she did would annoy me. But overall, her character was really good. The only thing that I really did mind was when they would specifically focus on her to like set up her character, but not in a way that is connected to the plot that is happening in the series. Okay, I'm gonna kind of spoil it a little bit, but there's this point where she's being like psychoanalyzed by the psychologist. Like, you kind of understand why it's happening, and it's not a bad scene or anything, but it just kind of feels weird and out of place, because there is this whole thing going on with like the gangs and stuff, and what Luke Cage is doing, and like all the other concurring plot lines and such. And that thing about her being like psychoanalyzed, when it kind of cuts back to that, I just kind of roll my eyes a little bit, because I'm like, why is this happening? Why is this important? Not specifically that it's bad, like I mentioned, but it's just kind of weird. Okay, let me talk about the bad guys. Cottonmouth, the main baddie, he's really cool. He's kind of like Wilson Fisk in the way he thinks, but as a character, he's pretty different. He's very cool, he's very funny, like he's kind of crazy, and he's, you know, that kind of thing, like that kind of cliched boss, like gang boss, where someone does something out of place, oh, I'm gonna kill him. And I've actually kind of getting annoyed by that fucking cliche, because it happens so many times. It happened in Daredevil, it happened in Jessica Jones, it happened in season 2 of Daredevil. Like, it's just how many times do I have to see this gang leader, one of the lackeys of the main bad guy, do something kind of bad, and then you already know what's gonna happen. The main bad guy is gonna see him and is gonna be like, oh, what you did is okay, but then he fucking kills him or some shit like that. That's such a cliche, and it happens so many times in this. And it wouldn't be so bad if it didn't happen so many times in Daredevil and like Jessica Jones and stuff. So when it kind of happens in here, I'm just kind of like roll my eyes a little bit. Cottonmouth is really exciting. Cottonmouth's cousin, another black lady, she's also a really cool part of the show. I'm not gonna go into much into her, but like, she's kind of the opposite of what Cottonmouth is. Cottonmouth is like this gang leader who's like doing this filthy stuff, bad things. His cousin, the councilwoman, like I said, she's a councilwoman. I don't remember her name because they always refer to her as councilwoman. She's kind of like the opposite in spectrum, where she's like, oh, this law person who's like in the system and she's working for good, but she's kind of trying to act like the thing that her cousin is doing, she's like kind of not involved, but she very clearly is. And like, it's this really cool like mechanic where it's like, oh, here's the main gang bad guy, but there's also this councilwoman who's like very clearly trying to show that the government is also corrupt. Like, it's not just bad people like Wilson Fisk or Cottonmouth that make everything bad. Like, the system, the government is already corrupt. Like, without Cottonmouth or without Wilson Fisk, like, things would still be shit. They're mostly the main bad guys, but there is actually 2 other bad guys who actually become a very big deal later on in the show. And I'm not gonna explain why, because I don't want to spoil things, but Shades, who's there from the very beginning, he's kind of a really cool character, this white guy who wears shades, and he's kind of tied into Luke Cage's backstory quite a bit. He's cool, he's weird, like, he acts certain ways, he's very manipulative. Whenever he's doing something in a scene, he has a lot of presence, and that's exciting. But Shades worked for someone named Diamondback, and I don't want to explain who Diamondback is, but a lot of the problems I had with this show kind of came from his character. When he is first introduced, like, he's kind of mentioned a lot of times, but when he is first introduced, he kind of fights Luke Cage, right? And I was very, very confused about who he was, because Luke Cage is acting in a certain way, and the show hasn't like gone out of its way to explain who this guy is. So I'm very confused about who this Diamondback man is. Like, in my mind, I was like, oh, they're acting this kind of way, so they must have had to introduce him later before. And I was thinking, maybe he was in Luke Cage's backstory that they talked about a little bit. No, I don't remember him. And it wasn't until way later, towards the end of the show, where they kind of talk about him more, where I realized, oh, that's who he is. That's what his connection is. And once you learn what his connection is with Luke Cage, it kind of doesn't make sense. It's weird. It's really weird how they decided to introduce him at first. And I feel like it's the weakest part of the show when that happens. Other than that, another thing that I just didn't like about this show, not completely, they're all really enjoyable, but like, there are moments that are not as enjoyable as other parts, clearly. There's a point where Luke Cage is in a really bad situation, and he kind of faints, and we have this weirdly paced, there's this flashback, and the flashback itself is not weirdly paced. It's just really weirdly implemented. Like, he's fainted on this really bad situation, and he's kind of thinking back to his origins. they're pretty much the classic comic book origins where he's in prison and stuff, and how he got his powers and all that. And they kind of talk about Shadesmore and how he's connected to Luke Cage and all. And it's just weird because that episode feels really badly paced in the form where they're like talking about his backstory and stuff in flashbacks, but then they cut randomly back to his situation like minimally throughout the episode, and it just feels weird and odd. There's this really cool dynamic though that I really enjoy that made this show really unique. Like Luke Cage, he doesn't wear a mask. He's not hiding his identity. He's Luke Cage. He's walking around. People know that he's Luke Cage, that he's a superpower person. And that's really cool. It's really cool to have this mechanic where it isn't like Jessica Jones hiding her powers or like Daredevil wearing a mask. Luke Cage is just going straight out fucking face, like just wearing a hoodie at first and people don't recognize him. But then people are like, oh, he has superpowers. There's this kind of moment towards the end where they kind of Amazing Spider-Man 2 it, where Luke Cage is fighting a Diamondback. That's not really a big spoiler, but he fights him, and then like these people crowded around him, like cheering for him. They're like, Luke Cage, Luke Cage. And kind of like at the end of the Amazing Spider-Man 2 where he's fighting the Rhino, and like all these people are around him for some reason, just watching them fight, like they have no sense of danger or whatever. And it's a kind of cool mechanic. It's really enjoyable to see a superhero show where he's not like hiding his identity and stuff, and it's cool that way. But overall, I found it really enjoyable. If you watch Daredevil and Jessica Jones and you enjoy that, you're gonna enjoy this. Oh yeah, another thing that I want to talk about that's really important because the show is really rooted in Black power and Black communities, like I mentioned. But it also goes on to talk about and kind of analyze like the recent events with Black Lives Matters movement and stuff like that. And it's kind of cool that way, where like these sort of things where these cops are mistakenly like attacking Black people because they think he's Luke Cage and stuff like that, and it just kind of plays into the idea of the movements that have been recently going on in real life, which is pretty cool, and they're really well done. They're not kind of done in a disrespectful or like just to be there fashion. Like they actually make sense. It's really cool. I really enjoy the show. I don't really know what else to say. I'm probably gonna finish recording this. I'm gonna be like, oh, I forgot to talk about this. But other than that and the things I talked about, let me see if I have a couple things that I don't like. I kind of did talk about things that I didn't like, but like, let me see if I have any others. To be honest, I don't think I can think about anything else that I really disliked. You know, my main problem is just really lied in the way that Diamondback was handled, the way his character was handled. Like, his character himself was pretty cool, but the way they introduced him and his backstory and all of that, it just kind of didn't make sense for a little while, and I didn't like some of the flashbacks with Luke Cage. It's just kind of pacing things that I didn't like. But overall, the pacing was pretty good, other than those few occurrences and stuff like that, and it was a really enjoyable show, so I really recommend you watch it. I kind of threw this video together real quick because I wanted to get this out this weekend, because I just watched it and the show just came out and it's kind of stuck in my memory and stuff. So, yeah, thank you for watching. I'm CL Phoenix Spellbound, and have a good day.